episode 34 of the podcast. This week, we're going to talk about why avoiding fear, anxiety, and stress is good for the dogs, and keeping them calm, comfortable, and cooperative is good for the dogs. But it's also good business because we don't get paid enough to risk injuries. So, from an accounting point of view, we'll do some cost breakdowns. This is the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, and a certified professional dog trainer. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. When we work with dogs in the grooming setting, in the veterinary setting, or even at home for safe handling, when we avoid fear, anxiety, and stress, and we build new behaviors, keeping a dog calm, comfortable, and cooperative, when we spend time educating owners and other pros, and when we expect some sort of owner compliance, these things are all good for business. The fact is, you don't get paid enough to risk injuries. So in this first part, I'm going to talk about, from a grooming point of view, what happens if you have an injured dog. Now, first, an injured dog means that you're going to apply first aid. That means everything stops for a little while. If there's other people in the room, they are very likely to come over and help apply first aid. That could be something as simple as putting Quick Stop on a nail, but that could be trying to get a tongue to stop bleeding. That could be trying to get an ear to stop bleeding. That could be someone trying to hold the dog and calm the dog now while it's injured. So I want you to think about taking time to apply first aid. If the dog was aggressive, this could still be dangerous because it's not like the dog calmed down now that it's injured. You might need to leave and bring the dog to the vet. You might need to have someone else come into your shop or bring the dog to the vet for you. If you work alone, somebody else might need to be there to let dogs go for you. Then there's the vet bill. Now, even though I have business insurance, and I'm sure you do also, I still have a deductible to pay. So it's not like my business insurance would cover it all. I believe my deductible is $500. So it's very likely I would pay the entire vet bill. So depending on what happened, I want you to also think, if this is a dog that was just generally kind of being a little bit rowdy or a little bit wiggly, there's reasons why we want to calm them down. Because depending on what happened, you may choose to not charge for the grooming or discount the grooming or offer a free grooming in the future if you feel that part of that was your fault. And sometimes we do. Definitely there are times where it's like, oh man, that was my fault. And it breaks our heart anyway to hurt a dog, but to feel like, oh, that one was my fault, right? So not only did you not make money on this grooming, now you're in the hole for a vet bill, and you might even offer another perk, a free grooming later, right? Do you see how this is adding up? This is becoming a lot of money, right? Now, you also have an owner who has to care for an injured dog. That could be a dog who has to walk around with one of those Elizabethan collars, the cones, or walk around bandaged. That dog might not be good for their owner either. And I have worked with plenty of owners who ended up calling in a trainer because their dog was not good for eye medication after an eye nick. little scratch on the cornea, not necessarily like a popped eyeball, right? But a little scratch on the cornea from being goofy with whatever groomer they were working with. That owner was mad at the groomer. And I had to explain to her, but you knew your dog's bad for his eyes. Did you ever work on it? She's like, no. So it's not like the owner's going to say, oh, yeah, I know he's bad for that. No, they're upset with you. They're upset with you. Now they have an injured dog. The dog might not be good for them either. Now they might be incurring even more costs because they might need help medicating, or they might need help with wound care or bandage changes, or having somebody come to the house and walk the dog in the middle of the day because the dog can't be where the dog normally is and is on crate rest. So I want you to think about all of these things, all right? There's a lot more cost breakdown if a dog is injured, right? Then, not only did you not make money, you paid out more than you would have made. You've got a hurt dog, you've got a ticked off owner, and at least one owner is ticked off. You might also find that you weren't able to complete all of the dogs for the rest of that day. You might not have gotten it through everybody because of the time spent with an injured animal and the time spent talking to an owner about their injured animal. So now other people might be upset too. And then we have the additional part where your reputation can be on the line, because whether or not it was your fault or whether or not you handled it perfectly, that person could turn around and tell everybody how awful you are. This place was so terrible and they did something so mean, right? And it's a nightmare. We all know that that's something that could happen. But I want you to think about, these are some of the risks. We don't get paid enough to risk injuries, right? There's no amount of money that means that would be something we could recover from quickly. Okay? And that's just if we injure a dog. Now, part of why I don't suggest having just a special handling fee that gets tacked onto a regular price is because it gives an impression to an owner that it's just a matter of doing a little bit more effort. Their expectation is that if you pay more, they put in that little bit of effort and the job will be completed. Everyone will be happy, right? They don't get it. They don't understand. So when we say with our safety policy that, you know what, we are not going to get this dog perfect today. We're not going to worry about pushing him through something he can't handle. We're going to try to keep him calm, comfortable, and cooperative. We're going to spend time working on behavior. We're going to spend time helping this dog be good for this grooming and for future groomings. And we're going to avoid injury because we're going to avoid it by avoiding fear, anxiety, and stress. And that's part of educating our owners. We might send them to a vet. We might send them to a trainer. We might send them to a vet behaviorist. We might send them home with homework. But we need to start thinking about that risk is not appropriate. No, certainly none of us wants to hurt dogs. But from a business sense, you lose money. So you also run a risk of losing people. And what I mean by that is it's really hard to find groomers. And part of the reason why groomers are so hard to find is because at some point they just burn out or become their own boss so that they only have to put up with the baloney they're ready to put up with. And I was there. I get that. There's compassion fatigue in our industry. And I was there at one point where I was like, you know what? I don't want to force this dog to do it when I know I made progress. And here it is, the end of the day. He's a little bit damp. I don't care, but my boss wants him to be perfect. Someone else is going to come along and say, just get it done, and undermine all of that good faith I built up with him. All that good faith and all that trust that if we just left it go, give him a chance, next time he's going to be better. But when we're kind of pressured into getting things done, and that might be by somebody we work with or corporate or something like that, or it could be by the owners. If you circle back, you as my listener, who is aware of a lot of these issues, if you circle back and say, you know what, the risk of an injury is expensive. It's just not good business. It doesn't retain customers the way that we think it does. It definitely doesn't. The customer whose dog gets injured is not likely to say, oh, well, you know how he is. I mean, sometimes we get those people, but more likely than not, they're never going to put work into it. They're never going to help you get the dog past it unless we stop making it normal, right? We have to tell people there is a solution set. And modern groomers know how to use this solution set. This is how we get things done efficiently, effectively, and cost effectively. So if you're having some trouble explaining it to a coworker or a boss, this is some of the way that you can describe it, right? That one injury is a big deal, and it can cause chaos. Now that's just if the dog gets injured. Let's talk for a moment about if an owner helps. Because sometimes owners are coming in and they're like, oh yeah, I can help with my dog. I will say that I do let owners help occasionally, but I have to be very, very sure that they're following my instructions. But I gotta say, even if you have them sign a waiver of some sort, at the end of the day, it'll always circle back to the professional should have known better. The the professional shouldn't have allowed an unsafe situation. The owner wasn't protected, right? It's not a risk to be taken lightly. And if we have owners helping, they often are totally thinking their dog won't hurt them. And we know a dog who is panicked, or a dog who is scared, or a dog who is unsure of anything that's going on around them and just starts to flail uncontrollably. There are lots of ways for a person to get hurt. It's not necessarily the mouth. Could be the dog hurts somebody's back because the owner's trying to pick him up. Or could be that the dog claws them, or jumps up and like slams into them. There are lots of ways for people to get hurt. And if a person gets hurt, that can turn into a lawsuit. Then you still have the same kind of problems you had with the dog getting hurt. Now we have first aid. We might have a hospital run. We might have everybody for the rest of the day not get done. We might have all these things happen. It's just not good business. So if you are an owner and you're interested in helping your dog be good, some of the ways that you can work with a groomer is to ask them exactly what kind of things they would like you to teach your dog so that we can all work together. And then ask if you can be there, right? As a house call groomer, I often have people in the room with me, and I tell them they can sit. I try to get them across the room, sitting on the other side of the table, drinking a cup of coffee, right? Yeah, sure. Stay, watch, and just have a pleasant conversation. And for many dogs, that's enough to help them calm down. And in the rare occasions where I ask someone like, hey, can you just come over and give him some love? That's all I want from them. Just come over and pet him. But because we're trying to avoid fear, anxiety, and stress, because we're trying to keep the dog calm, comfortable, and cooperative, we're also not creating a high-risk environment. And the high-risk environment is not good for business, and it's not good for safety. And in the next part, we're going to talk about what happens if a groomer gets hurt. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Now I want to talk about if a groomer gets injured. If a groomer gets injured, now first think about, we all have to stop for first aid, right? Whether you're working alone, whether you're working in a grooming salon, at least with that one groomer who got injured has to stop and do some first aid. But there have been plenty of times I was in a grooming shop where someone needed to, go get an ice pack for someone else or bandage a hand for them, right? There are times where it creates everybody stopping to get things done. And I want you to also think the rest of that grooming day may be unfinished. The rest of that dog's grooming might be unfinished, especially if you work by yourself. You may end up with an incomplete groom, your hand bandaged, and the rest of the day off, which means you are not making money, right? The shop isn't making money or the business isn't making money. You are not making money. Right there, boom, this is not cost effective. So if we look straight at the numbers, right, there's plenty of good reasons to keep a dog away from fear, anxiety, and stress, because safety is super important for our bottom line, for us to make money, for us to make a living. So if you end up in an emergency room, I want you to think too, if you're working alone, you need to find somebody trustworthy to watch the dogs so you can go to the emergency room. If you work in a shop, I want you to kind of plan on that. Like if you work alone, be thinking about what is your plan, your emergency plan, if something happens and you need to close the door and get, to the hospital. So if you work with other people, there's a good chance that maybe someone's going to be able to finish your grooms for you. Hard to say, but most of the owners will be sympathetic. I've been injured before. Owners tend to be really sympathetic, but they still want you to finish their dog, right? They're like, oh no, but you finished him, right? Because they just don't get it, oh, but he's still damp. Yeah, he is still damp and I'm limping over with him and here you go, right? So you're probably not going to charge the entire amount for the dog that injured you. You're going to end up losing the rest of the day, money for the day, Okay, be thinking about that. The business isn't making money for the rest of the day. You're not making money for the rest of the day. What if you're out of work for a few days or a few weeks? What if you needed stitches and you're not able to use your scissoring thumb? That's a pretty serious issue. What if you ended up needing surgery on your wrist or something like that that could take you out of work for a couple weeks? So even if you have health insurance and you have some sort of a um, personal disability insurance, you might have ways to get funds to pay your own bills, but your business isn't making money, right? Was it really worth it? Was it worth it to push that dog further than I suggest you do, right? To get it done, to make it look prettier? Or are you kind of thinking, God, I kind of wish I had just not pushed it, right? I think sometimes we feel like the way to keep customers and keep customers happy is to get it done. And that's not good business. So that's why this one's focused all on business. Often I'm speaking from the heart and I'm speaking from the dog's point of view and all the kind reasons to do it. But this week I just want to talk about the sheer just cost. Let's just talk about the cost, right? Now, what about if you got injured and let's say you lost a finger or a thumb, or you decide, I'm going to leave grooming. I can't continue grooming. You now are losing your livelihood and what? Starting life all over again? And at what age? Right? And I want you to think, was it worth it? Is it going to be worth it to you in that moment that you're like, well, but a schnauzer's got to have a schnauzer eyebrow, is that going to be what they put on your gravestone? A schnauzer's got to have a schnauzer eyebrow. If we spend the time helping a dog to be relaxed, working on the behavior that we do want, and giving our owners a good education about how they can help get their dog prepared for the things it needs to know in life, and we expect compliance or we don't work on that dog. Those are ways to make money. There are plenty of dogs out there. Find the right customers. Don't put yourself in situations where you could get hurt, where a customer could get hurt, or where a dog could get hurt. Because even if you're thinking, oh, I charge him an extra $20 every single time as a handling fee, $20 is not even close, not the tip of the iceberg for some of these costs if someone gets hurt or if a dog gets hurt. $20, $20 if a dog gets hurt? Nope. No. Even if they paid $20 every single time they get groomed, nope, they still didn't put enough in the account for you to pay a vet bill and a whole bunch of bandage changes and what it does to your business when they get all upset with you and tell everyone they know, right? When you end up in the local paper as the person who hurt their dog. So I want you to be thinking about the cost breakdown is important. And if that's part of how you can help, maybe a boss or a coworker, start opening their mind about doing things in a different way. Because it used to be that we thought a dog needed to learn when they were younger and that they just couldn't learn it later. And we know now that that's not true. So at some point, you might be working with someone who was taught that at some point. I was taught that at some point. And at the time, we didn't know it was incorrect. But now we do. So now we have this ability to spend some time teaching dogs to be good. And don't we have a responsibility to do it? I think, personally, I want the dogs to be happy. I want them to be good for me. I want them to be happy. I want me to be safe, them to be safe, their owners to be safe. And a dog who's better for grooming is also better for their owner when their owner needs to clean bums and clean eyes and look at feet. They're better for the vet. They're just better for everybody. Doesn't that make more sense, right? So if you're working with anybody who is kind of old school, the the kind who wears like a bite like a badge of honor, like, yeah, I got bit Tuesday. Yep, about once a week, like I want you to start looking at that as, wow, that is going to come back and really crush their business someday, right? That's not the way to run a business. That's not helping their customers. It's not helping the dogs, and it's certainly not safe for them either. As someone who has been hurt, believe me, It's not worth it. Now, the other thing that we have to look at is the burnout rate and compassion fatigue. When we work with dogs that are pushing us and flailing against us and trying to bite at us, that is a really stressful work day, right? That gives me anxiety. That gives me stress. It doesn't make me afraid, but I know a lot of groomers, especially if you've been bit before, the fear part's there too. So when we talk about fear, anxiety, and stress, that's for the people also. And I got to say, I'm not a fearful type, but the first dog, after you get a bite, the first dog that you work with that gives you a little bit of an eye, you have to kind of, oh, all right, deep breath. Okay, nope. I'm going to go ahead and do this, right? And just work with this dog and see if I can calm him down. It's that first one that's hard. But I know a lot of groomers who have a couple of breeds that they won't work with anymore because they've had a couple of experiences that were truly frightening. Chows are often on that list. Everybody's got something, right? But I want you to think about this is a good way to do business. Keeping the dogs calm, keeping them relaxed, working on them being compliant with us, and just doing the things we need to do and telling owners how to help us out with it is good business. So while it may seem granola crunchy, wishy-washy, fine, let it. It's also just money crunching. From an accounting point of view, it's good business. As of this week, I started a Patreon account. So my hope is that people who want to learn more can go there and find out more information. I will have stuff that's generally for the public that you don't need to pay to see. And then I will also have 2 other tiers, and I'll have more information for those other tiers. So that's patreon.com, creating great grooming dogs. And I've linked that in a number of different places. So I'll put that on the Facebook group and the Facebook page and the web page. And hopefully I can get some more information to you guys that's not relying just on audio. This week's weekly action step is to calculate how much money you lose and how it affects your life by being out of work for 2 whole days. Out of work, no pay, with an injury. Owners, I want you to do this too, because it helps us get insight when we're talking about another business taking care of our animal, right? So I want you to think, if my dog injures somebody, how does that affect their life for the next couple days, right? And break it down by cost. Think about how much money that is. A couple days' wages plus a couple days of the business not making any money. There's a lot more involved. And that's a really good step this week to help us all remember that teaching the dogs to be good is not just about being kind. It's also good business. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video. I'm also happy to come to you if you're near my area in southern New Hampshire.